This episode discusses murder, suicide, sexual assault, and dismemberment. Listeners' discretion is advised. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast called True Crime with Dream. I'm your host, and today our episode is particularly grim. It is not because it has many victims, it is actually because of the reason why these victims were killed in the first place. Between August and October of 2017, a 27-year-old man used Twitter to research for people who have expressed desire to end their life. But instead of helping them, he exploited them. 9 people entered his apartment in Zama, Japan. None of them came out alive. This is a disturbing case of Takahiro Shiraishi, also known as the Twitter Killer. So, who's Takahiro Shiraishi? Takahiro Shiraishi was born in 1990. He grew up in Machida, a suburb known for its quiet neighborhood. Friends described him as quiet, reserved, and average. He wasn't the type of person you'd imagine to become a killer, but those who knew him well say he always lacked direction. He dropped out of school early. By 2017, he had worked as a scout in Kabuchiko, Tokyo's Red District. His job? Coerce women into working in the adult entertainment industry. It was during this time he learned how to manipulate the vulnerable, and especially women in distress. The skill that would develop into something far more sinister. By 2017, Takahiro has created several Twitter accounts with names like @HangingPro, @SuicidalMaster. He would search keywords like I wanna die, suicide, can't go on. On these accounts, he posted as someone who understood pain. He offered people help. To some, he presented himself as a kind soul, someone who wanted to die and was looking for a suicide partner. To others, he promised a quiet and painless end. And tragically, people believed him. Now, in the span of 70 days, Takahiro Shiraishi killed 9 people, 8 women and 1 man, aged between 15 and 26. Each one of them he lured through Twitter. He used different strategies depending on each victim he wanted. The first victim, Mizuki Miura, 27, logistic company employee. Mizuki was identified early on by investigators as the first person murdered by Takahiro Shiraishi. At 21 years old, she worked for a logistic company in Kanagawa and had posted online on Twitter to express desire to live independently. When she connected with Shiraishi online, he posed as a sympathetic companion. After meeting him in person, she transferred about 500,000 yen, reportedly to help him rent an apartment in Zama. Believed she thought they were entering into some form of mutual supportive arrangement, but instead she was manipulated and betrayed. Once she entered his apartment, Shiraishi strangled her, raped her, dismembered her body. He stored her remains in coolers and boxes, using cat litter to mask the odor. Her disappearance prompted a concern from her family and friends, but at first she was treated as just another person struggling with mental health. It was only after uncovering the other murders that investigators realized the full horror. Shogo Nishinaga, 20, male victim, Yokosaka. Shogo was the only male victim of the spree. He grew worried about his missing friend. He reached out to the police and family. Eventually, through indirect Twitter communication, he set a meeting with Shiraishi, hoping to gather information about his friend's whereabouts. Instead, Shiraishi lured him into his Zama apartment under false pretenses, killed him, reportedly struggled him face to face. Authorities believe that this was done purely to prevent the exposures of Mizuki's murder and deprive investigators of any evidence. Hitomi Fujima. Hitomi, age 26, had relocated with her husband and daughter from Saitama Prefecture. She last worked early on September 13, 2017. Neighbors and co-workers later said she seemed hesitant that day and expressed unspoken regret about leaving her children. Her disappearance was deeply felt by her family, who believed something felt off. Not much was publicly revealed about her final interactions with Shiraishi, but DNA confirmed her remains are in the apartment. Her family mouthed publicly, and the father described seeing women of her age everywhere and feeling acute pain. Like the others, her remains were dismembered and placed in a cooler. Akari Suda, 17 years old, a high school senior in Fukushima. Akari was a 17-year-old high school student, a senior aspiring to be a manga artist in her hometown, Fukushima. Known for her artwork and leadership in school, she vanished after attending a sports day on September 26, 2017. Her disappearance came as a shock to classmates who remember her as a creative, supportive, and full of promises. Her remains were later identified via DNA among those who stored in the containers at Shiraishi's apartment. Natsumi Kubo, 17 years old, high school student, a senior in Saitama. Another high school senior, 17 years old Natsumi, attended a school in Saitama and had posted on social media about struggling emotionally. Educators remember her as a thoughtful student who cared deeply about her community. She met with acquaintances in her school's art club but vanished shortly afterwards. Identified via DNA, Natsumi's remains were also found in the Zama apartment. Her disappearance increased the public concern over statistic predators who target teenagers online. Hinako Sarashima, 19, a university student in Saitama. Hinako was a 19-year-old university student in Saitama. Her friends described her as studious, someone who occasionally expressed emotional distress online as she navigated adulthood. She connected with Shiraishi over Twitter after posting messages about despair. As investigators uncovered the horror of the apartment, her DNA was linked to remains stored among 240 body parts. Kazumi Maruyama, 25 years old, worked at a store. Kazumi was 25 years old, and she was a young convenience store employee living in Yokohama who had only recently lost her job. Known for being a hard worker and cheerful, she had tweeted about feeling lonely and overwhelmed. Shiraishi connected with her under the guise of offering friendship and escape. She traveled to Zama and was murdered in the pattern seen before, strangled, raped, and dismembered. Kureha Ishihara, 15 years old, high school student, a freshman in Gunma. The youngest victim so far, 15 years old, she had participated in a child assembly program earlier in 2017. Classmates said she cared deeply about her community and often asked questions about the population decline. Her open-minded curiosity made her both optimistic and tragically vulnerable. She posted about feeling isolated online. Shiraishi offered condolences and supposed escape. She agreed to meet. After arriving in Zama, she became another victim. Aiko Tamura, age 23. The final known victim was identified as Aiko Tamura, approximately 23 years old. She had posted suicidal messages on social media, expressing severe loneliness and despair. A concerned brother investigated her messages and connected with a helper online known only as Yumi, who helped set up a fake meeting, allowing police to track her to Shiraishi via CCTV. When officers entered Shiraishi's apartment on October 30, 2017, they asked, "Where is Aiko Tamura?" Shiraishi muttered and pointed at a cooler. Inside, 2 severed heads were found, including hers. She was one of the 9 victims. Inside his apartment, Shiraishi lived in a 13 square meter apartment in Zama, just south of Tokyo. When police finally entered in October 2017, they found 9 heads stored in a cooler. Other body parts were stuffed in storage boxes and toolkits. The air was thick with rot. Investigators found bloodied saws, ropes, duct tapes, and over 240 pieces of human remains. He had layered body parts in cat litter to hide the smell. It was a horror scene that stunned even the most veteran investigator. At the trial in 2020, Takahiro Shiraishi showed no remorse. He admitted to the murders and said he didn't believe his victims truly wanted to die. His lawyers argued diminished capacity, saying that the deaths were consensual suicide. The court rejected this defense, declaring none of the victims consented to be killed. The judge said that the crimes were extremely selfish and hideous in extreme. In December 15, 2020, Shiraishi was sentenced to death. He did not appeal. Recently, in June 2025, he was hanged, Japan's method of executions, making him country's first execution in 3 years.
This incident has caused a great shock and discomfort to the public. Due to selfish reasons, there were 9 victims over a span of about 2 months. A grave situation where young and precious lives are being taken.
The case shocked Japan, a country with very low crime rates and high emphasis on personal privacy. It sparked a nation debate about mental health, suicide prevention, and digital vulnerability. Twitter was criticized for allowing suicide-related content to remain visible. After the case, they updated policies regarding promotion or discussion of self-harm and death. Thank you everyone to listening to my podcast. This one is really difficult, so if you or someone you know is struggling, please talk to them, please ask for help, and know that you're not alone and there's somebody out there who loves you.